The Honourable Member for Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be splitting my time with my esteemed colleague from the beautiful Lac St. Louis. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the topic of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement and the benefits it will provide to Canadians and Ukrainians. I am proud to speak in support of this free trade agreement on behalf of the riding of Davenport. In my riding of Davenport, believe it or not, there used to be a fairly significant Ukrainian community, and it was centered around a Ukrainian school and 2 churches. Most of the Ukrainians have now moved away to Etobicoke and Mississauga, but the churches and the school and the memories still remain. The school is actually called St. Joseph's. I used to attend it. It was my grade school, but sadly it is now closed. My father was Ukrainian. That's where I get the name Dzerowicz, and my mother is Mexican. And I feel very blessed and lucky to live in a country where I can both be a proud Mexican Canadian and a proud Ukrainian Canadian. So today I stand here in my Ukrainian shirt as a proud Ukrainian Canadian to talk about something I'm so excited about, the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. It's a blessing for me to be able to strongly support this agreement. I believe stronger economic ties will be mutually beneficial for both of our countries. And I also believe that it will be helpful in so many other ways, including helping Ukraine continue to strengthen its financial systems, to develop its economy, strengthen civil society, and to combat things like corruption that has plagued Ukrainian society for far, far too long. So what is the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement? It's a modern high-standard agreement that includes chapters in a breadth of areas, including trade facilitation, government procurement, intellectual property, competition policy, transparency, and anti-corruption. Once fully implemented, this agreement will not only support Canadian and Ukrainian businesses through preferential market access, but also deepen trade linkages, further strengthening Canada's bilateral relationship with Ukraine, enhancing cooperation, providing for increased transparency in regulatory matters, and help reduce transaction costs for businesses. As in all Canada Free Trade Agreements, the cornerstone of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement is new and enhanced market access for Canadian produced and manufactured goods. Once the agreement is fully implemented, 99.9% of Canada's current exports will be eligible to enter Ukraine duty-free. This will make Canadian goods more competitive in the Ukrainian market. Importantly, it will put our exporters on a level footing with European companies who are already benefiting from the EU Free Trade Agreement with Ukraine, and it will lead to new opportunities for Canadian businesses. It will also put Canadian exporters at a decided advantage, Mr. Speaker, relative to most of the rest of the world, which is not lucky enough to have a free trade agreement with Ukraine. Let me elaborate on this point a little bit further, Mr. Speaker. On the first day that the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement enters into force, Ukraine will eliminate tariffs on approximately 86% of current Canadian exports to Ukraine. This means that Canadian exporters will see a huge immediate benefit from this agreement. The balance of Ukraine's tariff reductions and eliminations will be phased in over periods of up to 7 years. Speaking of specific products that will benefit, the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement will eliminate tariffs on all industrial products and the vast majority of agricultural exports to Ukraine. For example, Ukraine will eliminate tariffs on industrial machinery, will face tariffs of up to 10%, which currently face tariffs of up to 10%, as well as articles of plastics and cosmetics, which currently face tariffs of up to 6.5%. In terms of agriculture, this agreement will eliminate tariffs of up to 20% on fish and seafood products, including on caviar substitutes, which will be duty-free on the first day of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement when that enters into force. Alongside Canada's fish, seafood, and industrial goods producers, Canada's leading agricultural producers will also benefit from the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. Now, Mr. Speaker, I don't have time to go into all the examples in all the agricultural areas that will benefit from this agreement, but know that once this agreement is fully implemented, tariffs of up to 30% on key Canadian agricultural goods will be eliminated. This will provide Canadian agricultural producers with the same market access opportunities as their European counterparts, an advantage over most other competitors. Now, I've spoken at length about the goods market access benefits of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. So now let me turn to other ways that the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement will help Ukraine. Not only will help their economy tackle some of the issues that they've been trying to reform, such as corruption, but it'll also help them to build their economy, build their financial sector with a huge emphasis on small and medium-sized businesses.
Canada has adopted a wide-ranging approach when it comes to economic aid. This approach will help with stability, reform, and economic growth in Ukraine. Since January 2014, Canada has devoted over $543 million in additional aid to stability, reform, and growth. This amount includes $400 million in the form of low-interest loans which will help stabilize the Ukrainian economy as they implement democratic and economic reforms. Our aid package also includes $143 million in bilateral development aid to support reform and economic growth in Ukraine. Our support for economic reforms will promote more inclusive growth, as well as investment and the creation of jobs in the private sector. This will help reduce poverty, and our support to economic growth will stimulate local economic growth, and it will help small and medium-sized businesses be more competitive. Canada has also deployed over 65 specialists who are offering specific expertise over the short term and sectoral support over the long term in a number of crucial areas, including the fight against corruption, as we are helping put in place and train prosecutors at the National Office to Fight Corruption. We're also helping with financing as we help restructure the office of the Finance Minister. And we're also supporting trade by helping create and implement an Export Development Office. Canadian aid goes hand in hand with Canada's objectives in the Free Trade Agreement with Ukraine, as we are promoting economic opportunities both in Ukraine and in Canada as we look to improve the quality of living of citizens of both countries. As we've seen around the world, trade is often a key motor of key driver of development, and it can lead to clear gains for all commercial partners. Canada is determined to offer practical aid to allow Ukraine to benefit from this free trade agreement with Canada. This project would strengthen capacity in Ukrainian small businesses, in particular those directed and run by women. It will help them improve exports and attract investment from Canada.
Small and medium-sized businesses have contributed greatly to job creation and economic growth in Ukraine. They can adapt quickly to changing conditions in the economy, for example, new opportunities, business opportunities with Canada, strengthening their participation in trade, their ability to attract foreign investment, and their ability to comply with international standards and grow their productivity will make it possible to generate sustainable and inclusive economic growth in that country. We are sure that our support for trade and investment will provide the technical assistance small and medium-sized businesses need to meet international standards and better take advantage of the opportunities that will flow from the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. This deal offers advantages to companies and consumers in Canada and in Ukraine. It will also help strengthen the capacity of government partners in the Ukraine. It will help them to implement new systems and processes to facilitate trade and investment flows between our two countries. Mr. Speaker, I would encourage all members to support Bill C-31 as well as ratification of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement at the appropriate time.
All honourable members, the swift passage of Bill C-31, which will allow the government to move forward for the implementation of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement and allow Canadians to start benefiting from this agreement. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaire. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for her remarks. And I wonder if the Liberals are trading the same Vishnovanka around between the different members, or if there's multiple ones. But I want to ask the member who gave the speech about the discussion we've had throughout the day about satellite images and sharing them with the Ukrainian military. We all agree in terms of the importance of Canada's strong relationship with Ukraine, but unfortunately under this government we had a decision made to stop providing those important satellite images that the Ukrainian military was using in their fight against Russian-backed terrorists in Ukraine. So I want to try and understand why the government did that, and if the member thinks that it would be a good idea to start providing this kind of support to the Ukrainian military again.
The honourable member for Davenport.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for his great question. This Vishnovanka came right from Ukraine. It's actually mine. It's not been traded with anyone. I cannot be a proud Ukrainian Canadian without owning my own Vishnovanka, so I'm very, very proud to have this. In terms of his question, you know, trade agreements are more than just mutually benefiting our respective economies. They're also about forming stronger relations in a number of different areas. So security is one of them, defense policy, other foreign affairs issues. So working together in a number of different ways. And I know that from the time that we've been elected, when we came into office just over a year ago today, that our government has stood very firmly in support of Ukraine. We have provided a number of ways of assisting them in terms of not only helping to support their economy, and this free trade agreement is one example, but also doing everything we can to support them on the ground, to help build their forces, and to help them in terms of building a stronger democracy. Thank you.